Tuesday, October 16th. I have been happily married for 23 years. 2 children, one in college and the other a sophomore. I had a job writing software for an online marketing firm. Jenna worked as an assistant superintendent of schools in Parma, Ohio, 2 towns away. On Wednesday, October 17th, I was a deeply disturbed married man. Pretty sure my wife was having an affair and wondering what I should do about it. On Friday, October 19th, I was 400 miles from home, driving south and trying to figure out what the hell the rest of my life was going to be like. Needless to say, I was angry. Very, very angry. My wife Jenna was endowed with very large breasts, and to be honest, she was the one who first attracted me to her a million years ago when we were both sophomores at Ohio State University. She had gotten a little heavier over the years, and who hasn't? But she was still a very sexy woman. However, while large breasts can be a pleasure for a woman's husband, as I realized a long time ago, they are not so much fun for the woman herself. Jenna had to store very carefully to find the right bra with enough support and minimal strain on her back, and by the end of the day she was usually desperate to get the damn thing off. Early in our marriage, in the years before we had kids, when we had a lot of privacy, it was an almost daily ritual that when she came home, she would take off her blouse and bra with a sigh of relief and let me rub lotion on her back, trying to soothe the angry red lines that showed where her bra was. Sometimes this led to some very pleasant fiddling in bed, more often not. But I was always sympathetic to Jenna's discomfort and always mindful of those lines on her back. So on Tuesday, October 16th, when I happened to come home early from work, I was just shocked to see her almost smooth back. I was in the bedroom, changing into street clothes, preparing to spend a few minutes combing the backyard before it got dark. Jenna was pleasantly surprised to see me already home, and we chatted about nothing important while we changed. Without much ado, she stripped off her top and bra, as usual, with practically no touch-ups. There was no question of her wearing it for more than an hour or so, and certainly not all day. "Hey, babe," I said nonchalantly, "did you stop by the YMCA today to swim?" Jenna loved to swim and went to the pool at least every week or two, though not usually on a weekday. She turned and looked at me strangely. "No, honey, why would you say that? Don't you think my hair is wet?" Quickly coming to my senses, I reacted. "No, sorry. Probably a stupid question." I shrugged embarrassedly. "It's just that I called you in the middle of the afternoon and Emily said you weren't home." It was a lie. I hadn't called at all, but it was the best I could come up with at that moment. At that, she blushed slightly. "Chloe told me a couple days ago about a sale at Pottery Barn, and I went to see if I could find anything for the Rayner's daughter's wedding gift next month. Turns out there wasn't anything suitable, but it was nice to get out of the office for once. It was like skipping school." Jenna quickly pulled herself together. It seems her improv skills were as good as mine, but something was off. As I labored until my 7th sweat, gathering leaves into piles and then into bags until it was too dark to see, I felt more and more anxious. If Jenna had told me she'd gone shopping for clothes, that might serve as a plausible explanation, though why would she take off her bra too, unless she was trying on underwear? But in any case, no one undresses at Pottery Barn, so where was she? Who was she with? And why the hell did she take off her bra? I went through the typical list of signs of infidelity in my mind and came up with almost nothing. Our sex life hadn't gotten hotter or colder recently. She hadn't seemed more aloof. She hadn't dressed more sexy. She hadn't stayed overnight. She hadn't made secret phone calls that I knew of. So when I got back to the house, we ate dinner as usual, chatted about the kids and a little about Thanksgiving plans, then watched a little bit of Idiot Box and went to bed. And in the morning, after a perfectly normal breakfast, I picked up my travel cup, kissed Jenna, and headed out to the garage. There, before getting in my car and heading to the office, I hid a small voice recorder under the front seat of her Prius. It was pretty low-tech, but it recorded for 10 hours, so I could hear all the cell phone conversations she had on the way to work and on the way home. And, I thought grimly, all the conversations she had during the day to spend time with her male buddy. Based on not much evidence, I was already fearing the worst. On Wednesday night, with all my antennae on alert, I noticed that Jenna seemed nervous, a little concerned, a little more concerned than usual. Her hugs and kisses when I walked into the kitchen were a little warmer than I expected, and she seemed to glance at me often as she prepared dinner and I set the table. It was very subtle. Nothing you'd notice unless it was coming from a woman you'd lived with for 8,500 days, give or take a few. Jenna was concerned about something, and it was clearly about me, and her way of dealing with it was to be a little kinder, a little more considerate, and more affectionate, though it was almost comical how she tried not to overdo it. A hug in passing, or a hand on my shoulder as she carried dessert to the table, but nothing that would make me suspicious. She clearly didn't want me to say, "Wow, Jenna, you're so touchy-feely today, nothing special going on." So she was diligently crossing a fine line, and watching her actions made me even more anxious. We had another seemingly normal evening, cleaning up in the kitchen, reading in the living room, checking our phones for half an hour. And after we went to bed, after I waited until I was sure Jenna was asleep, after I quietly got up, took the tape recorder from her car, and carried it into my office to listen to it, then my marriage was over. She called him on her way to work, from her cell phone, or maybe some other phone she had hidden in her car. I didn't know. I only heard her part of the conversation, but it was more than enough. "Hey, babe, it's me." "Yeah," I grinned slightly. "Me too. I still got goosebumps all last night. It was hard not to crack a wide smile right in front of him." "Yeah, sure. Yeah, listen for a minute." "No, I don't know how serious it is yet, but that's why I brought it up. Mike was weird last night. He asked me if I swam at the gym, which seemed like a terribly random question. And then he said he called me at work and I wasn't home, and I had to make up some bullshit about going shopping for a wedding present. No, I think he bought it, but it's all a little, I don't know, weird, tense. Like, I don't know, we're both watching each other a little bit, you know?" No, look, babe, no, I'm not gonna say that. You think I'm gonna let go of this big log you keep driving into me?" Another small chuckle. Listening late at night in my quiet house, I clench my fists. "No, I think... Wait, Teddy, are you gonna listen? It's just a matter of mind, kid. I'm gonna take a couple weeks to be a good girl, just to make sure everything's okay at home." "Yeah, sure. Me too. But I think a couple weeks should be enough. He loves me, and we still get along as well as we used to. So listen, this is the beginning of radio silence, okay? Like they say, don't call me, I'll call you." Yeah, and I feel the same way. And when we get back together, nuclear explosion. I'll leave you feeling like a tractor trailer ran over you, in a good way. Here she let out an animal laugh, a sound of utter delight. At that moment, I could have fucking killed her. I sat motionless, thinking about going back into the bedroom and strangling her. Would I wake her up first, so she'd realize what I was doing and why? Or just grab her by the throat and pull her in before she has time to realize why the life is being drained out of her? I listened to the last couple minutes of the conversation, a few more affectionate words, a couple more promises about how great it would be when they were back together, and she picked up the phone. I leaned back in my chair and glanced at the clock, 2:38 a.m. I suppose a good time to end the conversation. It had been easy enough for me to avoid her for most of Thursday. I'd gotten up an hour early, on 3 hours of sleep, left her a note about the early meeting, and had breakfast at IHOP. I wouldn't be able to tell you what I ate. I ordered bacon, eggs, and fries, but as far as I knew, they brought me 3 slices of cardboard and an orange. I had already figured out what was going to happen next, No divorce, no legal nonsense, just getting the hell out of Dodge. I could clean up the mess later. I was in no hurry. My boss Alvin and I are old friends. No more than 10 minutes of serious talk and it's settled. I would take my 5 weeks of accrued vacation followed by an unpaid leave of absence until I was ready to return. I had a few trusted co-workers who could pick up my projects for a while. A quick trip to HR and my paycheck would be deposited into my parents' account in West Palm Beach. They had retired 4 years ago, and that's where I was headed. I did all the usual work with insurance and beneficiaries, replacing Eric and Diane with Jenna, and then spent the rest of the day briefing my co-workers on what they would need to replace me. I sent Jenna a quick text about needing to stay late at work, and then went out and bought myself a couple of brand new, very large suitcases. When I got home, it was already 8:15 and Jenna had already eaten. I pondered for a bit on what to do. Act weird so she'd have to worry and wonder even more? But instead, I decided to ease her anxiety so that when things went south, she'd feel like she'd been hit in the back of the head with a 2x4 hammer. I liked that image a lot. So I came in all smiles, gave her a big hug, apologized for being late, and thanked her twice for making dinner and heating it up for me. She sat with me while I ate, smiled a lot, told the usual stories about her workday, even squeezed my hand a couple times. I wondered if she'd suggest a little bedroom romp, but perhaps she was afraid it would seem unusual. So we went to bed with the usual nightly hugs, kisses, and affectionate words. Amazingly, I was able to tell her how much I loved her without throwing up. Breakfast on Friday was just as normal. After it, I left for work, stopped at a Starbucks a couple miles from home, read the paper until I realized Jenna wasn't going to be there, and then headed home again. In 3 hours, I filled my new suitcases with clothes and the back seat of my car with everything else I really cared about, from my computer and printer to pictures of the kids. I waited until mid-afternoon to call my mom and dad, by which time I was more than halfway to Charlotte. As you can imagine, they were shocked. I said briefly, "Hi, Mom. How are you doing? Can you put Dad on the other line?" Long story short, Jenna's been cheating on me. I moved out this morning, and I'm going to spend some time with you guys if that's okay. I thought I'd find an apartment in the neighborhood for a month or so, until I decide what to do next. Hey, Mom. It's okay. Please don't cry. I'm furious. I'm hurt, but I'm okay. It'll be nice to just spend time with you both. Maybe you and I can play golf, Dad. Yes, that's exactly right. Just please don't say anything to her, okay? She'll probably call you tonight, so please just tell her you haven't heard from me. Mom, yes, I know that's a lie. I think it's reasonable considering she's been lying to me and cheating on me for months. Yeah, almost to Charlotte. I'll stay somewhere for the night and see you tomorrow afternoon. Okay, see you then. I love you too. Bye. It had been a rather strange weekend. How could it not be? A 46-year-old man who had just found out his wife was having an affair with him was sitting at his parents' house licking his wounds. But Mom and Dad were great. We talked. Mom refed me, nothing new. Dad and I played golf and talked some more. Calling the kids wasn't fun, but I knew I had to do it. Jenna had called my parents twice looking for me, so she'd probably call Eric and Diane. I left the house without a word, without a note, without leaving my wedding ring. No dramatic gestures. I just left. Diane cried a little, and Eric was very quiet, until he swore a couple times. But they were both happy that I was okay and that I was with their grandparents. And they both promised not to tell Jenna where I was. In the car, I had plenty of time to think about how I wanted it to end. I mean, the divorce was a sure thing. There was no way I was going to live with that asshole again. But in the short term, confrontation? Having to listen to her whiny apologies, meaningless arguments? I don't think so. Thank you very much. So I waited 5 days. 5 days during which Jenna must have been going crazy wondering where I was, whether I'd gotten the whole story, what I was going to do. For 5 days, she called my parents, my boss, my kids, and they all said in one voice that they didn't know where I was. And on the 6th day, Thursday, October 25th, I called. Hello, Mrs. Fleury? This is Mike Adams. My wife Jenna works with your husband Teddy in the superintendent's office. Yes, he's fine, at least as far as I know. But I'm afraid I have some bad news. No, please let me explain. I apologize for calling. But I have evidence that my wife was having an affair with a man named Teddy, and it's quite likely that this is your husband. Yes, the audio file. I only have Jenna's version, but she calls him Teddy, and as far as I know, we don't know anyone else by that name. It's not exactly proof, but... Yeah, sure. Give me an email address and I'll send you a link to Dropbox where you can download a copy. Really? I'm sorry, I had no idea. But if he's done this before, this tape should help you nail his ass. You could show him an excerpt, maybe just a couple sentences from Jenna, something really damning, and don't tell him you only have her version. Let him think you have the whole conversation recorded. That way you can get him to confess. Again, I'm furious too. My marriage to Jenna is over, she just doesn't know it yet. Yes, and I'm really sorry to have to tell you this over the phone. Okay, sure, I'd be happy to. Please take care of yourself. That would be the end of it, or at least the beginning of the end. Mrs. Fleury was going to roast Teddy over a slow fire, and it wouldn't be long before Jenna would hear the bad news from him. Did I wonder why all of this was happening? Of course I did. But did I really think I'd ever get an explanation that would satisfy me? Hell no. The woman I'd married, loved, created a family and a life with, she decided she was entitled to sex on the side and went and got it. It didn't matter if he seduced her, if she had a midlife crisis, if she was actually a sociopath. She was my faithful wife and I loved her, and now she isn't and I didn't. I'll deal with the rest of it step by step.